Greetings, viewers, and welcome to today's info sharing snippet. We will be covering the important feature of user access permissions, as well as the customizing of user system trees within Sage 200 Evolution. Now, Sage 200 Evolution does have the ability to create a combination of access permissions for agents who are going to be using and processing transactions within the application. And we all know how important it is to ensure that the necessary access permissions and security options have been implemented within a database. So today we're going to be seeing how to implement certain access permissions, as well as how to customize the system tree for the specific users within the application. So firstly, we're going to be starting with going to go create a user, and that is done via the administrator. We go to administration, agent, administration, agents, and they would then simply have the existing list of users there, and if need be, go and create an existing user or a new user who would be then processing certain transactions or undertaking certain functions within the application. Right, so let's go add a user, and we'll just give the user a name. And you could obviously just fill in the details over there. Very importantly, insert a password for the user and confirm the password and apply certain details here. But the thing we're going to be focusing on here is really the access permissions, because this will determine exactly what functions the user can or cannot process within the application. So obviously, depending on the user's functions within the organization, they would then be allocated certain access permissions. So under my access permissions, I've got a whole range of options there, and these permissions deal with the various modules that can be found within the application. So for example, if I were to go maybe to general ledger, you'll see that there's a couple of options for maintenance, permissions, transactions, etc. Now, we really have an option where users can relate to go and create, for example, master file records, and then secondly, obviously processing transactions within the various modules. So if I, for example, go to customers and under maintenance, you'll see that there's a whole list of options that relate to the master file setups. For example, a user can, for example, add a customer, they can edit a customer, delete a customer, etc. So these are really the options that relate to master file records that are going to be created or edited, etc. So simply a case of, for example, going to customers. And what you notice first of all is that there really are three settings. There's a shaded block. You can have an empty block, or else a block ticked. Okay. The three different scenarios are as follows. If the block is unticked, it simply means is that that function cannot be undertaken by the user. If the box is in fact ticked, it means that the user has the ability to perform that particular function. So in this case, they are able to, for example, add customer records if the box is ticked. Unticked means is that they don't have the ability to add those records. If it's a shaded box, it simply means that the permissions related to a higher level, which in this case would usually be an agent group. So what you can do is you can create, for example, a group, and one agent group links certain agents to the group, and then within the group go allocate various access permissions if you need be. So for example, you've got a group of individuals who are performing a similar task, and you can then group them into an agent group, and then from there you go allocate them certain access permissions. But just remember, it's a case of blank block, the function cannot be undertaken. If it's ticked, can be undertaken, and if you've then got a shaded block, that permission relates to a higher group, for example, an agent group, etc. So it's simply a case of running through the various options over here, all the modules, and based on those options, simply going to go and specify if that particular function can or cannot be carried out by that user. So we're going to do a couple, quite a useful example today, and that relates to the processing of credit notes. So very often you may have obviously users who are maybe undertaking or processing invoices. However, you want to maybe restrict certain users from capturing and processing credit notes without having some form of prior approval, or only have certain individuals process credit notes. that have been generated but not yet processed. So I've got my user, and I would then go through, depending on what these functions were going to be within the organization, I would then move through all the relevant options, and then based on that, simply go and check what permissions I can allocate to that user. So if I go, for example, to inventory, as you can see, I've got a couple of invoice permissions there, and I can then go, for example, allow certain functions for that user based on these options. But now we want to go look at something like credit note permissions. So very importantly, as you can see, the whole of options there, and the one I'm looking for is credit note processing. So I'm just going to remove this option, which means that the user cannot process the credit note. However, it needs to go to an be authorized first, and then that will then be processed. That person will then process the credit note. So it's simply a case of removing that option, and I'm then going to log in as that user and just see and process the transactions. So I'm just going to, under options, I'm just going to remove that tick box. And as I say, if need be, obviously insert the user's details together with their password, etc. And any other relevant information relating to things like if they are going to be using retail point of sale, purchase order information, etc. Right, so currently now if I go back to my access permissions, the user has got certain rights, but they don't have the ability to go and process a credit note. Right, so it's been sorted, simple as that. Just wait for this to refresh, and then I'm going to log in as that user. So log off as administrator, log in as the user. Now, what's very important to understand is that if you are going to be, for example, changing or editing the access permissions for a user, it's very important that the user has exited the program while changes are being made to that user's access permissions and their profile. So just have them exit the application, make the changes, and once that has been completed, the user can then log in and continue processing based on their new permissions. Right, so I'm just going to log in as the new user I've created. Right, and log into my database. And you'll notice is that as it's the first time that the user is opening the company, this option will appear. So just a case of specifying which option is going to be relevant, relating to prompts, etc., and what date to use when opening up the company. Right, so firstly, I'm just going to be processing an invoice so that we can see exactly how that occurs. Check what's, there we go. Right, so I'm just going to go through, I'm just going to make a couple of changes here to the user's preferences. And I'm just going to, right, there we go. Right, so I'm just going to go through to inventory. And remember is that the user has got the ability to process an inventory invoice. So let's just go through to transactions and invoice. So let's just go and there we go. Right, so there we go. We've processed, the invoice has been captured. We're now just going to go process the transaction. And we're good to go. Right, so it may be a case that the goods have been returned for whatever reason, and now we need to go process a credit note for this transaction that we've done. Okay. Remember this particular example, we're saying that the user does have the ability to go and locate the invoice, convert that to a credit note, however, not be able to process the transaction. So, same user logs in, goes to credit note in order to process the credit note for the goods that have been returned. And we're just going to go open, and we're now going to go find the invoice that was previously processed. So I'm just going to say INV, and then let's go find the transaction date and find. Right, so as you can see, we've got the invoice there which was processed. I'm going to just double click on it and bring up all the options, all the line items, and there we're good to go. Okay, so obviously the important thing here is that if there were, for example, you need to change some lines, for example, maybe only a certain portion of the items were received or returned, or only some of the items in the document were returned, obviously change those details here. And however, what you will notice is that the process option is not applicable or not available, which means that this document can be loaded. However, the particular user cannot process a credit note, seeing as though that permission has then been removed from their profile. So there we go. And no processing for this particular transaction. Right, simple as that. Now, that's the process of allocating access permissions. However, we do have another feature which enables you to go and customize the system tree of a user. Right. So obviously, evolution consists of multiple modules. However, you may want to, for example, not display all the modules or all the nodes on a particular user system tree. And to do that, we need to go and access the system tree for the user and then implement the various changes so that only certain features will be available when they open up under their login details. Right, so as we can see is that the access permission has been implemented. The user can process invoices but not credit notes. So I'm going to log in once again as administrator. And what we're going to be doing now is we're just going to remove the credit note option. So in this particular example, we're going to say that the user does not have the ability to even process credit notes. Right, so we've logged in there. And I'm now going to once again edit the user and go into their system tree. So user, obviously this particular time the user would have been logged out of the application. Edit the user profile. And what you see there is there's an option for system tree. So I'm just going to go to my system tree there. And currently now this is the default system tree, which means that all the options are available on display for that user on the system tree. So to change it, I'm just going to make a couple of changes here. Move that down a bit. And what you notice is that if I click on the top, I've now got the ability to say insert standard notes. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm just going to go, for example, through to inventory, and under transactions, I'm going to say that the user has got the ability to, for example, process invoices, but credit notes, we're going to remove that option from their system tree completely. So just a case of highlight and delete that option. And for example, maybe the user doesn't make use of, for example, bill of materials. Delete all the options that the user perhaps won't be using. So for example, maybe retail point of sale isn't applicable to their functions. They won't be processing, for example, general ledger transactions. Highlight that option and click on the delete button. Just go confirm there that currently the user will be able to process invoices, but the credit note option has been removed. And we're just going to say OK to that. And there we go. Right, so now I'm going to log in as the user. Just wait for this to load. Right, so what you'll notice immediately is that on the left-hand side of the screen, that the options that which we deleted, for example, the job costing, bill of materials, retail point of sale, etc., they no longer appear here. And if I go into my inventory, I'm going to go into my transactions. And what you'll notice is that the credit note option does not even display as a node on the system tree. So no problem there. The user can log into the invoicing screen, process the transaction. As per normal, update the document. But as you can see from here, is that the credit note option isn't available, which means that the user doesn't have the opportunity even to access or open the credit note screen. Right, so simple as that. I can go edit the system tree and remove certain nodes, certain dialogues, etc. from that user system tree. Now you may ask is, for example, how would I, for example, bring this or add an option onto user system tree? And really another simple process, which is quite easy to accomplish. Let's just log in as the administrator. And let's just say, for example, we're going to now put the credit note option back for that user. So log in as admin. And we're going to add the credit note node back onto that user system tree. Right, so once again, edit the agent's details. And I'm going to go back to the system tree. Now, it's going to bring up the system tree which the user is currently linked to. And what I'm going to be doing now, let's just move this down a bit. There we go. And I'm just going to either right click, or I can use it up and say insert standard node. Okay, and as soon as I say that, you'll see that a second window displays here, which has got details of the default system tree, which contains all the possible evolution modules. And I'm just going to, on this particular side, I'm just going to transactions there, and I'm going to go find inventory, transactions, and I'm going to say, for example, credit notes. And I simply need to right click and I can say add this node only. Okay. Before I do that, what you'll notice is that if I tick, for example, on a main heading and I right click, it'll say, for example, add this node with children, which simply means is that add this particular node called transactions together with all the subheadings or sub features within that particular main heading. So I can, for example, add transactions and all the options below that simultaneously, or I can simply go through to that particular feature, credit note, right click, and as you can see, because it's a subheading, only the option add this note only is available. So there we go, add the note only. And once again, it immediately goes and adds that particular option to my transactions where I've highlighted it on the left-hand side of the screen. Close that. And now, as you can see, it's available. And if need be, I can still go and maneuver this option. So I can say highlight the credit note. I can simply use a down arrow key to go and place it where I want it to appear on the system tree. I just want to confirm again, just a case of going to this location where you want to insert the node, right click, insert standard node. From this screen, go find the option to be inserted, and we're good to go. So for example, if I wanted maybe to have this user perform some job costing functionality, I can simply say highlight that, and job costing, I can say add this node with children, and there we go, it appears there. So just based on exactly where we want to add the details, there we go. And I'm now going to say okay to that, save these changes to the system tree. I'm then going to log in as the user, and we'll see that those options now appear on the user system tree. So log out as administrator. Log in as a new user. All right, so now if I go back into inventory, transactions, credit note is available on the user system tree. Open up my credit note screen. And even if I select my user, as you can see, the process is not available. So the access permission is still intact, and just that we can obviously load the credit note, but not process the transaction based on access permission settings. And we then have that node or dialog back on the user system tree. So as you can see, it's really a two sort of phases that you can make use of. For example, firstly, understand what the user's functions are going to be within the database. Okay, based on that, go allocate them certain access permissions. And the second phase would then be, if required, simply go and customize the system tree so that only those particular functions are available when they log into the system. So, as you can see, a very important function within the Sage Evolution program that allows you to allocate access permissions as well as customizing the system tree. And very importantly, that when making any changes to a user's profile or access permissions, ensure that the user has exited the application. I do hope that this info snippet has been useful. Thank you so much for watching. It's goodbye from me, over and out.